Welcome, true believers, to the show on the Fandom Podcast Network that takes the deep dive into the MCU as we talk about the shows, the movies, and the relations to the Marvel comic material. Welcome to this. On this episode, we're going to be discussing the latest two episodes of Miss Marvel, episodes 3 and 4, hitting literally just about 12 hours ago from the time we're recording this, but I cannot talk the MCU alone because it is too vast, too glorious, and it's full of a bunch of crazy stuff. So there's only one man who I can think of to bring that in. And of course, that is my brother from another mother, the co-host of the Fandom Podcast Network and this podcast in particular, Mr. Kevin Gill Reitzel.
Yeah, you went there, didn't you? Nice. Aaron would appreciate that.
Yeah, Aaron pays me good money through PayPal. I'm just saying. How are you, my friend?
Doing good. So yeah, we had discussed that we're going to be doing these at 2 at a time, and we've already done the first 2 for Miss Marvel, and now we just wrapped up watching episode 4. So now we're going to be covering episode 3 and 4. Episode 3 of Miss Marvel is called Destined, and just the recent one we just watched is called Seeing Red.
Yes, and I'm just going to say this right off the bat before we get started with anything else. I'm glad we're doing these 2 episodes at a time, and I know we're going to discuss that a little later in the show of the reasons for that. But you know what? Before we get started, too, I just want to remind all you true believers out there, check out the Facebook page for True Believers in Marvel and MCU fandom group. We try to keep you updated on all the latest Marvel news, and hopefully there's going to be a lot here coming soon, Kevin, because there's some big things happening.
In fact, Thor: Love and Thunder, baby, coming out next week as of this recording, dude.
Yeah,
and hold on, right near your birthday too.
Oh, more than just right near my birthday. In fact, before we get started, I think it's appropriate that we do this. It's time for Snit, Thwip, and Kapow. Let's get to some MCU news. So, Kevin, before we got Love and Thunder coming, we're going to put that to the side for just 1 second, because last week we were doing a live culture clash, and we had some breaking news that was Marvel related. And I want to reiterate that here for our true believers listeners. Pretty big deal. A lot of people didn't think the MCU would be at San Diego Comic-Con this year. A lot of people thought, they're going to save everything for D23. Well, they were wrong. Kevin Feige has announced that the MCU will be returning to Hall H with some major announcements. Kevin, I got to ask, are you hoping for things that start with the letter X?
I'm hoping something that we can look forward to, that we know that's coming for sure, to get excited about. Because, when we did the live culture clash podcast there on YouTube, which you can watch now, make sure you go check it out. I shared my concerns about what's been happening with the MCU. And this is someone who's been invested since day one, and some hit and misses that's been happening, because I'm not feeling that there's a general path for us right now. It just kind of feels like, as that one change my mind meme came out, it feels like a lot of these movies are just some side quest after we beat the final boss. So I'm hoping that'll happen. This, as you mentioned, this is kind of, I guess you feel that this is the reset phase for the transition phase. Yeah, the transitional reset phase, which I kind of wish they just would have said from the beginning, because Kevin Feige says, as we're nearing the end of phase 4, we're like, what? Oh yeah, I guess so. They're kind of like just throwing different stuff out right now that I hope is going to kind of, come together and happen, where it felt like we have a little bit better of a plan through phase 4 and the whole Thanos thing. So I'm hoping that what they're going to announce time-wise as well, so we can actually look forward to the date and the year of when this stuff is coming out, or the month or what have you, that this stuff that's happening, and we have to give it credit for at least sticking with the ramifications of what happened with the snap/blip. They didn't ignore that. That's affected a lot of people. So yeah.
I'm just going to throw this out there. If I'm a betting man, there's a couple of things that might come out of this Hall H announcement. One, I expect some kind of major announcement with Fantastic Four, either a date or possibly even some casting news. I think that is kind of they've already said Fantastic Four is going to be the end of Phase 4, and I really think that's going to be the apex to whatever the next big saga is going to be. And I've kind of gone on record. I feel that they're leading into what they called Secret Wars, and I think things are setting up that way.
I thought the Ant-Man and the Quantum Verse was supposed to be the big game changer here because it's supposed to introduce what's his name?
Well, I think what it's going to do is
what's his name? What's his name?
Kang.
Yes,
I was going to get that. Who, of course, we saw at the end of the season 1 of Loki, even though he wasn't named. But I think Kang is going to involve more Kang and tying into that. And Kang does have ties to the Fantastic Four as well. So I think the pieces are still in movement here. There's a lot of pieces and mysteries still floating around in this Phase 4, and I think we're going to start seeing some of it start come together here. But when Kevin Feige speaks, people listen.
Yeah, true. I'm curious how they're going to handle that Hall H if that's going to be if they've moved to the whole like Star Wars Celebration did, where instead of staying overnight, sleeping out in the night and on the floors and stuff, if they're going to do the what do you call it? The phone app lottery, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if you get in, you get in. You have a reservation. If you don't, you don't. So I'm kind of curious if they're going to move to that. On a side note, do you remember how I felt about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Kyle?
Yes, you were not necessarily a fan of it. You didn't care for how they handled the Scarlet Witch, and you had a few other issues with it as well.
I rewatched it today because it's on Disney Plus. Guess what?
No change.
No change. Still feel the same way. Yeah.
All I'm going to say is wait out on the Scarlet Witch, because that's actually leads into a couple quick bits I'm going to throw out. Marvel kind of sneakily announced a couple of things that they're working on. One is the Thunderbolts, Kevin. And I know we've talked a little bit about the Thunderbolts here on True Believers and things like that. The concept of the Thunderbolts is a bunch of villains who are put together as a team and portrayed off as superheroes. I think this ties into a lot of stuff that was happening with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, his character from Falcon and Winter Soldier and the end of Black Widow. And I think we're going to see, that's where we're going to see U.S. Agent next. I think we could see Baron Zemo as part of this. Obviously, Yelena could be part of this too. I wouldn't even be surprised if somehow they work in Tim Roth's Abomination into this group as well. So this is an interesting project. This is probably going to be a movie. However, on the TV show side, something very quietly, not 100% confirmed, but it sounds like it's happening. They're going to be doing a series based off the character of Wonder Man. Now, Kevin is probably going, who the heck is Wonder Man at this point?
I've heard of him. I just really don't remember his powers.
He's basically ionically charged, which gives him like super strength and an unbreakable skin and a few other things. But the big thing here is Wonder Man has a ton of ties to the Scarlet Witch. There's been off again romantic things with them in the comics. And there was a point where his brainwaves were actually used to give the Vision his initial personality. So there's some interesting ties to see how they might work this into the MCU, especially considering his history with the Scarlet Witch. So if this is going to happen, I'm going to be very curious. And they could go several different ways with this character as far as either doing it serious or maybe even going a little bit She-Hulky with how they portray this show. I think it might kind of depend on how She-Hulk does come August. So,
right,
just a couple interesting.
I'm looking forward to She-Hulk as kind of like a different look at things, and hopefully, it sounds like it's just going to be fun, and sounds like a character that doesn't need redemption.
Yeah, exactly. But Kevin, right now, the focus on the MCU outside of Miss Marvel on Disney Plus, we are, as of this recording, a week and a day away from Thor: Love and Thunder.
I love the fact that they've shown a couple of trailers for Thor: Love and Thunder, and I like the fact that they've been releasing a lot of like interviews with the cast and behind the scenes and stuff like that, and it's been kind of funny because they haven't been spoilery too bad about it, which has been kind of nice. But it's nice that it looked like they've had fun. And I think it's important to show fans that, especially with people like Taika and Tess and Hemsworth having fun on the set, and even Natalie, talking about it. It's been kind of fun. It helps with the hype machine while you're not giving away too much stuff.
And I'm going on a limb. I don't think I'm going out much of a limb here, Kevin, when I say that these trailers are going to be Marvel-fied trailers, which means there's a lot of scenes we've seen in these trailers that don't end up in the film.
I figured that, and if it's a funny scene that you get attached to in the trailers, that's when it pisses me off, though.
Yeah,
so that's what I want to see. It's like, come on, you could have left that in there.
Yeah, but I'm excited. Hemsworth as Thor has been great. I'm curious to see how they're going to play up the Jane Foster version of Thor, and Russell Crowe as Zeus. I'm just saying. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm curious about that. Yeah.
That's gonna be a little interesting and can set up a lot of other interesting things in this film. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited. I've already got my tickets. It technically comes out on my birthday of July 8th, but there's preview shows the night before on the 7th. I've got one for like 3:45, the first showing on the 7th. I am excited. But with that, it's time to get into the main topic of this week's show. It's time to talk a little Marvel, which means it's time to jump into some phases. So I'm going to hit that Tesseract up and let loose a little phase energy. Kevin, you are the phase man around here. Kick us into phase 1, if you would.
All right, phase 1, we got the plot description, some reactions, of course, and some discussion about the cast if need be. And, of course, we're doing these 2 at a time. So we'll do the first one, quick little reactions to it, and then we'll get into the episode synopsis for the second one shortly after, and then we'll get into the rest of the discussion. But the first one we're talking about is episode 3, called Destined. And that aired June 22nd and directed by Mira Menon. Najma explains that she and Cameron are part of a group of enhanced beings known as the Clandestines, or the Jinn, who were exiled from the Noor dimension, and that Aisha was one of them. She also reveals that the Bangle might be able to help them return and asks for Kamala's help. Kamala agrees, but Bruno warns her that interdimensional travel could be dangerous, so she asks Cameron for more time to ensure that they can do it safely. Cameron assents, but Najma refuses to wait and decides to force Kamala to help them. Kamala's brother Amir marries his fiancée Taisha, but Cameron crashes the wedding to warn Kamala before the other clandestines arrive. Kamala, Bruno, and Kamran are overpowered by the clandestines, while Najma tries to use the bangle, which triggers a vision of a train. The Department of Damage Control agents arrive and capture the clandestines, including Cameron. As Kamala and Bruno escape, Nakia sees Kamala using her powers. What? Santa contacts Kamala, revealing that she now also saw the vision of the train and insisted that Kamala and Muniba must visit her in Karachi. So, Kyle, we get a little more plot development in this. And now Kamala, a.k.a. Miss Marvel, a.k.a. Nightlight, is being summoned to Karachi there in Pakistan to figure out more of what's happening here. So, I know that this series isn't your favorite thus far, but how are you finding it after this 3rd episode?
There was things that intrigued me as far as getting into the story of how they're explaining Kamala's powers in this compared to what she is in the actual comic books. I actually like the concept of them doing the Jinn aspect of it and the Noor dimension, but I really, really had to take a step back when they mentioned the clandestines, because that is a kind of a cult type comic book that was a little bit more from the British side of Marvel things, done by the great artist Alan Davis, and I believe Chris Claremont was a writer on that as well. And that I really wish they would have let those characters are actually kind of fascinating and fun, and I would have loved to have seen them eventually get their own thing instead of using that for this. But I can understand, given the history of those particular characters, why they might use this for Miss Marvel.
Did you see the notes later in the episode?
Yeah, I know, but I have to get my initial things. But I'll get into more of the clandestine.
Okay, because I'm going to ask you about that, because I got that coming up later, because I have questions. So yeah. One of the things that I have liked about this episode, and I've kind of accepted for what it is, it's a coming of age story about a young girl who basically loves superheroes, and there's a history there, and now she's starting to have abilities to become a superhero, which is kind of like every kid's dream when you think about it, when they grow up idolizing comics and movies with our heroes and stuff. And so it's fun to see that. But the thing that I give this show a lot of credit for, especially in this particular episode, is showcasing other people's cultures. And we've seen a lot of that in the MCU, and you got to give big credit to them. And I love the fact that we're getting this Pakistani culture, or as, a lot of the people refer to as, oh yeah, they probably thought she's brown, but you're seeing this from their point of view, and you're seeing their cultures, and you're seeing, the way they speak to each other, the way they entertain each other, the way they kind of, just like other people do, they make fun of each other and stuff like that. And I love the whole wedding dance scene. I thought that was great. And I loved how her brother's ceremony was going on too, where they kind of sat down with their minister, and he asked the questions 3 times. Do you take so-and-so to be your husband or wife? And it was kind of fun because you saw each one of them kind of be kind of casual about it, like, yeah, sure. And then they kind of be a little less casual, and then they're like, yes, I do. And I thought that was kind of sweet. And learning more about, what's happening in the long run and getting teased to that, I thought was pretty fun. But, like you, it's not my favorite, but I think what's important though, is that that's okay, because this is someone else's favorite. And they're doing a good job, Marvel, of, celebrating other people's lives, and that they can also be part of this bigger world and not just be victims to the enemies and the problems of the MCU or anything like that.
Those are all excellent points. And like I said, Miss Marvel, I'm not hating on it. It's just not grabbing me like some other things have from the MCU. And that, again, that's fine, because I know what Miss Marvel is written for and what it represents, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And that's something I've given a lot of credit, especially to the MCU in this current phase, where they're taking some chances, doing some things differently from their normal formula, and I give them all the credit in the world for it.
I'm just going to throw this out there right now. I had it in the notes later, but can we give it up to Tanwir Mian, the lead singer of Brown Jovi?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The fact that Bon Jovi's kind of been a theme here, and that also we've got Bon Jovi living on a prayer during the fight scene, I thought was kind of funny. So let's having a hair metal podcast that will be returning, by the way, very shortly to the network. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back to the cast questions, because I want to go over the next plot synopsis for the next episode, and we'll kind of just bring up the cast in general all together after that. So the next episode we have is episode 4 of Miss Marvel, called Seeing Red. This one aired on June 29th. That is today, 2022. Director is Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. Kamala and Muniba travel to Karachi and reunite with Sana, her grandmother. Sana later reveals to Kamala that the bangle is trying to convey a message through the vision of the train. The next day, Kamala goes to the train station to investigate, but is attacked by a mysterious vigilante wielding red daggers, who mistakenly believes she's one of the clandestines. The vigilante, Kareem, later takes Kamala back to the Red Daggers hideout, where Kamala learns from their leader, Walid, that the clandestines are trying to break the veil of the Nur, which separates the Jinn's dimension from the human world, in order to expand and take over. The clandestines managed to escape the Department of Damage Control's Supermax prison. Was that really a Supermax prison? I just can throw that out there.
They got out of there way too easy for it to be a Supermax.
Yeah. But Najma elects to abandon Cameron for his choice in helping Kamala. Kamala begins training with the Red Daggers to master her powers, but they are interrupted by the clandestines. A chase ensues, and Walid is killed while trying to protect Kamala and Kareem. As the two of them fend off the clandestines, Najma strikes a blow on Kamala's bangle, sending her into the vision of the night of the partition. Just to clarify, Kamala seems to almost time travel, which is kind of interesting. And they're talking about the partition that happened in the past that affected so many of their family. So, Kyle, your first reactions to this one here. Again, the plot thickens.
There were some very interesting things in this one. in the aspect of, I like the fact that we're changing up the setting and we're going to Pakistan and Karachi and getting that side of the story and getting some story development there, seeing more of the history behind the bangle and how Kamala is tied to it, and that was an aspect I very much enjoyed. I think there was a couple of really good action scenes in this, especially with involving the Red Dagger characters, and the parkour they did, and the fights. There's a great fight scene with the clandestine in this episode. The only thing that I'm kind of at this point now with Miss Marvel that I'm a little frustrated with is the aspect of they are doing the slow burn on her story, and it feels like they're, even with Moon Knight felt a little faster paced with his origins.
Right. And
this it just feels like they're really just burning it up and making this whole series nothing but the origin story of Kamala Khan instead of, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the clandestine. Again, we have heard nothing but almost to the fact that Brie Larson is supposed to make an appearance in this show, whether it's at a stinger at the end of this series.
Have we actually received real confirmation of that, or is that just a rumor?
No, there's been a lot. I don't think Kevin Feige, but Brie Larson has dropped several hints that she was going to appear in this because it is supposed to set up some of the stuff that's going to be in the Marvels movie.
Okay,
so this is where things are going to get very interesting, but. For a character that's supposed to have a major impact in the MCU going forward, it feels like they're definitely taking a little bit more of a slow burn than I expected them to take.
Let me ask you this real quick. I don't know if I'll be stepping now. I'll ask you this. I'll just say this. I think that there's a possibility that what's setting up in Miss Marvel with this other dimension in the Noor, and we'll get into more of that later, that I think that's why Miss Marvel's important. Maybe it'll touch in with Shang-Chi or the Eternals or what have you, but I feel like what they're laying the groundwork for with this other dimensional stuff that's sharing our dimension here in the MCU as what we're seeing, I think that's going to have a big ramification at the end of this episode. Thus, as you just mentioned, carry us over into the Marvel. So we'll see about that. Did you have any comments about the cast? Because I got to say, I'm really enjoying some character moments with some of the family members. Like, the scene with like her father going to see Bruno at the liquor store and he's translating the stuff that he's working on. The scene where it's the day of the wedding and the brother is a little frustrated because they're hiding his shoes and little things like that. I can't remember everyone's names, so I'm not going to expect you to, Kyle, but I just wanted to get your overall general opinion on the cast thus far.
I think the cast has been fun. I really like her two friends, obviously Bruno, and then was it Nakia as her other friend. I really like the kind of bond they have between them. I warmed up to her relationship with her mother a lot in episode 4 because now that we see her grandmother and how the effect she has on her mother, and we're learning the relationship her mother had with her grandmother is very similar to what Kamala has with her mother currently. Kamala's a little bit more rebellious, and
it might explain her mother's overbearingness, I guess, so to speak.
So I find that a very interesting character development. I like her brother, and I like her brother's fiance. I think those are fun characters, and her dad is just a blast. Her dad. We need more happy people like her dad in the world.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, I've got we love visiting our friends over there at Den of Geek, so let's head on over there. We've got another great article here by Kirsten Howard, dropped on June 22nd regarding episode 3 of Miss Marvel, Destined. It's exposition time in Miss Marvel's episode 3, and the MCU's most delightful family are on the case. In the 3rd episode of the series, Destined, it was time to get some much-needed answers about Kamala's mysterious bangle and her family's history in the British-occupied India. But who cares that Kamala Khan's got the SADS or about the unsettling plight of the Jinn when Obi-Wan is fighting Darth Vader, for crying out loud? Because they were going on at the same time. That was kind of funny. Well, me, which is a good thing because I'm your Miss Marvel reviewer. So if you still have some time for Kamala's story this week with various lightsabers loudly clashing everywhere on Disney Plus, I welcome you. Welcome. While I know that stuff like this will have some MCU fans saying that the show is mid or too slow, Kyle, I really do like these more extensive scenes of Kamala's life. They're important because I actually care what happens to the characters in a way that I kind of didn't when I was watching Bucky help fix a boat in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or when Loki was forging a romance with Sylvie and Loki. Miss Marvel is pushing back against the Disney Plus MCU formula to create something a little bit more meaningful, and it will happily take its sweet time to do so. Yes, it's likely the back half of the series will have more action and more cameos from other MCU stars, but it's my hope that none of the show's tender and enthusiastic character building will get lost when all of that transpires. So, Kyle, she basically mentions here, Kirsten, that yes, it is doing the slow burn, and we are having a lot of character moments here. While I think you and I and the bigger MCU fans are kind of like, well, let's get to the ties of everything else. How's it going to fit into everything? Come on, get to it. And I totally get that. That still isn't a reason to convince you to like it more than anything else. But she's right. They are taking a different approach to this.
Yeah, in some ways, this is reminding me of the approach Loki took, because Loki took a very slow pacing as well with its story. I think the difference here, and there's a couple of things that get brought up here that I find interesting, is that I think because of the fact that they are dealing with a whole new culture and trying to open people's eyes to this particular culture too. That's one of the reasons why they're taking the time to have these more character moments, because the culture aspect of it is very much a piece of why Kamala Khan is the way she is. And I think you can't ignore that. So I think that is why Marvel has made the choice to spend more time on character development and the world around Kamala as a young female of Pakistani Indian descent, and from everything she has, whether it's on the religious side to dealing with family traditions and just family beliefs. And I think that's, in this case, because you have that, it makes the slow burn a lot more explainable than in something like Loki. But it's still, when you're used to a little bit more faster pacing from Marvel and you want to see your user powers more and kind of get to the villains, and we're just now doing that in episode 4, really, it seems like it's running a little bit behind. But I think in this case, it does work for this show and what it's trying to do.
A man who chooses family is never alone. That was one of the lines that the minister was saying during the wedding of Kamala's sister. And there's a really cute scene where she's, while he's saying that, you could see the look in her eyes of her just not learning about this bracelet and her powers, but the importance of family and what it means to each other. And, whether it's found family or whatever it is, it's nice that she's learning about her culture. And we see a little bit of that in both of these episodes. So, I like it for what it's doing. Where it's going to stand in the whole grand picture, I don't know. But I am enjoying seeing this young girl, learn about these new threats in her life, yet learning the other side of her family. Even though she's been living with them for so long, she's getting different perspectives, and she's learning that. And I think for anyone growing up at any age, getting older, there's always room to learn more. So Kirsten gave this a 4 out of 5. Now she goes on. I got another one here for the next episode. Miss Marvel episode 4 review, Seeing Red. Kamala Khan travels to Pakistan to learn about the Bengal visions and meets Red Dagger in a rich episode of Miss Marvel, written, of course, by Kristen Howard, and that one came out June 29th, 2022. In Seeing Red, Kamala and her mother travel to Karachi to visit her elderly nanny, so Bruno, Nakia, and the rest of the Khans sit this one out. Muniba has a strained relationship with her own mother because of her fantastical theories. Swamped Muniba's childhood experiences and made her feel isolated. but it's clear that they still have a strong connection to and could be close to patching things up, especially when one of those theories turns out to be true in a very near future. At this point in her life, Nani seems to have ceased trying to explain them, hinting to Kamala that less of that stuff is important compared to the real outcomes of the Bangles' power, and that they can probably figure it out together, but saying, quote, if you have lived like I have, lost what I have, you learn to find beauty in the pieces. I'm not crying, you're crying. I remain stoic and unaffected. And if you claim otherwise, I shall see you in court. Good day, sniff. That was very funny by Kirsten. She goes on to say, meanwhile, the clandestines easily escape from the Department of Damage Control's Supermax jail and make their way to Karachi, abandoning Cameron along the way for betraying them. This all leads to an extensive chase sequence. We've seen a lot of chases in the MCU, but at least this one feels a little fresh thanks to its backdrop. At no point did I feel Kamala was actually in danger, though. The show's peril is largely neutered with the knowledge that Kamala will go on to feature in next year's The Marvels. Waleed is the one who bites it instead and tries to save Kamala and Kareem. Rest in peace, Waleed. We hardly knew ya. We literally hardly knew ya. But ye were probably a lot cooler than an exposition dump avatar in another universe. And she closes out by saying, when Kamala and Najma tussle, the bangle gets a blade stuck in it, and Kamala is transported to Partition. We can now hopefully find out what happened to Aisha. My guess is that when she betrayed Najma and used the bangle to help her family escape instead of her clandestine one, Aisha either got straight up murdered by Najma or got stuck between dimensions. Miss Marvel will surely reveal the backstory next week, and it's likely to affect Kamala deeply. I'd really like to see Muniba and Nani find out all these secrets too. 3 generations of women finally brought together by the truth. I wanted to actually touch on that last thing there, Kyle, because let me ask you real quick. As you're watching this, are you wondering when her mother, Muniba, is going to find this out?
I don't know if it's that. I'm wondering if she's going to find this out, or if we find out she kind of knew already, and just didn't say anything, just kind of, because they've kind of played it up that she knows a little bit more than what she's letting on.
Okay, yeah, no, I could see that because it's also been a strain on her own relationship with her mother, Nani here, and and the strain has kind of carried on a little bit through her and her daughter, our superhero here. So, yeah, and it's I don't know, maybe I'll wait a little bit later, but yeah, I'll wait till later to bring up that topic because she mentioned about the chase scenes and stuff like that, but.
Actually, I have a question for you about those.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Were you pulling a little like maybe Indiana Jones feel out of these chase scenes?
Oh, yes, definitely. Especially from Indiana Jones 2, short round. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because there's in these chase scenes, it's a trope to always have the baby in peril, whether it's, it's with some family members or it's being pushed by a baby carriage and the chase is coming to them and stuff. So I'm like, okay, how are they going to fix this one? And it was up to Kamala to see the danger they were in. And it was cleverly used her powers to create that little like light energy crystal ramp, which also foiled the vehicle that was chasing them. So yeah, there's a lot to jump in here, but we're going to save some of that conversation for when we get into the next phase. But Kirsten did give this one also a 4 out of 5. Is there anything from that article that you did want to address?
I do want to address a little bit of the closing, what you said too, because I think that's going to be a very important part of these last 2 episodes. I think they've been setting up this generations of her family and how they're going to end up coming together, even though they've been apart in different directions. So, because one of the things that Kamala is very much more like her grandmother, where her grandmother still feels kind of lost, and obviously Kamala does. While her mother, I think, is she knows what's going on, but she's almost in a state of denial about it. That's the kind of feeling I get from her on that. Is like
that's a good point.
She knows that there's probably more to what her grandmother talks about, but she refuses to accept it. So
The little things I just want to mention too. I think the costume designer was great. I love the little circle of like gossiping aunts and cousins. I think that's kind of funny too, because we all have those in our family, which I thought was kind of funny. But let's go ahead and head into the next phase. Yeah, I felt that one. We're heading into phase 2, which is our trivia, and I've got some trivia here, Kyle. Actually, I'm going to let you take phase 2 trivia for Destined here, because I'm going to see what you think of these.
Okay, so what you're talking about here is the title of this episode is named after Magnificent Miss Marvel Volume 1, Issues 1 through 6, listed as Destined. Honestly, haven't read that, so I can't give you a whole lot of information on that, but I know that there's a few other things here that you got in the trivia as well. In the 1942 flashback scene, where the Jin find Kamala's bangle on a blue severed arm, and that was something I was waiting for this to bring up, because I noticed that too. That's Kree, and that's where you start getting your connections to Carol Danvers and Miss Marvel.
That's a Kree arm, is what you're saying?
I think that is a Kree arm.
Okay.
And I think this is where this is where I think in this phase 4 of the MCU, Kevin, you talk about things coming together and little pieces dropped here and there. This is starting to be some of those early connective tissues, because I think there's definitely some things going on with the Kree and the clandestine and this bangle, whether it's maybe the Kree found this other dimension through their own experimentation and we're trying to access it through another ways. But yeah, this is how you're going to start. I think this bangle is going to end up being, and this dimension is going to be what's going to lead into whatever the main plot point is for the Marvels.
Well, that's in that trivia a little bit further down, where it says the floor of the wrecked tomb in the opening of the 42 flashback sequence reveals the 10 Rings organization logo crafted into it. The 10 Rings, of course, are villains in the MCU movies Iron Man and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the 10 Rings. So that little message or whatever that the Shang-Chi rings were sending to somewhere that they did at the end scene there, going to be tied to Nor or something. We'll find that out, I guess. Yeah.
Well,
you got anything else in this?
Well, you're talking about the 10 Rings logo crafted on it. There are a lot of rumors there's going to be a 10 Rings series on Disney Plus, and it's not going to be the 10 rings that Shang-Chi wears. It's going to be about this criminal organization, and I think it's going to be about its history in the MCU and how it connects to a lot of things. And I think that's going to be very fascinating. The glue pieces are coming, Kevin. I promise you, they're coming. The one I also want to address, the Jin are sometimes known as the clandestine, which is a family of long-living superhumans in the Marvel Comics created by writer and artist Alan Davis. I need to address this, Kevin, because this is as I said earlier, this kind of irked me a little bit that they used the clandestine like this. If you go back into the late 80s and early 90s of Marvel Comics in the X-Men realm, there was a character of Captain Britain, and he had a very cult following in some Marvel comics that were only published in the UK. If Dan Hadley were here, he would be frothing at the mouth to talk about these because he loves these books. Alan Davis is an incredibly popular artist. They took that character and spun it off with a few X-Men characters that had kind of fallen away from the team and created a book called Excalibur. That book kind of became part of the X-Men family, but it was so successful that they gave Alan Davis the permission to create the clandestine, which was kind of his mind and creation of these almost like immortal, long-living superhumans who had been influencing things throughout history. Yes, Kevin, I know you're thinking the Eternals, but these characters were much more fun and much more interesting. It was a very British comic, but the characters became very cult following for a while. They even had a X-Men clandestine miniseries crossover, and these characters have been a lot of call to bring these characters back in one fashion or another. Right. So I kind of makes me disappointed that they've used them this way here. I think there was other ways they could have went, but I think because so few people actually know who the clandestine are that don't read the comics, they can get away with it. So,
all right. Well, I had a section later in the show talking about the clandestine, so we'll see if there's anything left to talk about.
I always leave a little piece of meat on the on the bone for you, Mr. Reitzel.
All right, real quick though, superheroes have to get hungry, and Kamala's father discusses the strange appeal of the Hostess fruit pies. to him. In the 70s and 80s, Hostess ran a well-known comic book advertising campaign with multiple publishers, including Marvel Comics, that consisted of often silly one-page stories where the superheroes would defeat villains with traps using Hostess baked snack good as lures or used as bribe to gain victory. Do you remember these, Kyle?
Oh, I remember these. They were all over the place in those late 70s, early 80s comics. But, it's all about that synthetic cherry filling.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Whatever that was, it was still good. All right, I got a few more here. Trivia for episode 4, Seeing Red. Kareem says, "Come with me if you want to live," to Kamala, which is an obvious Terminator 84 reference. Also, Captain Marvel actress Brie Larson almost played Sarah Connor in Terminator Genesis 2015 before Emilia Clarke got that role. That's interesting. That would have been an interesting turn if
I love Emilia Clarke, but I think Brie Larson might have been a better casting choice for that particular role.
Yeah, that's interesting. When Kamal and Kareem walk into, by the way, it's really funny when Kareem says, "I've always wanted to say that."
Yeah, I know. Huh?
But come with me though, we're in danger. When Kamal and Kareem walk in the Chinese restaurant for the first time, a radio can be heard playing Disco Diwani from the Bollywood film Student of the Year in 2013. And the title of this episode is named after Seeing Red's story arc from Marvel Voices Identity Number 1, which revolves around Kamala Khan's visit to Pakistan and her struggles with her dual identity as a Pakistani and an American. Sabir Pirzada, who wrote the story for the episode, also wrote the Seeing Red comic story. Kyle, I got to give it to them for inviting these comic artists and writers to come back and say, "Hey, you want to write this story here and create this whole connective tissue within the Marvel writers and artist and storytelling world here."
Yeah, I hope this is something they continue to do, because I really like the fact that they're doing it. I know they did that with Moon Knight as well, and I think it's a great idea. They need to keep this up.
When Red Dagger refers to Kamala Khan as American, she retorts that she could be Canadian. That's because she's got the Jersey t-shirt on. This is reference to Khan's actress Iman Vellani actually being Canadian. An Ant-Man artwork at the Karachi station contains a reference to Adrian Alphona. Do you know who that is, Kyle?
I am not sure who Adrian Alphona is, actually. I'm looking up the Marvel Wiki right now. He designed the New York Comic-Con poster for the first season of Runaways. And he's also has a special thanks credit in Doctor Strange. So he's a guy who's done some artistic work for Marvel over the years.
Very cool that they've done that. Very, very cool. All right. Well, that is the trivia here for episodes 2 and 3. Take a quick break from our True Believers MCU discussion, and we'll let you know what's happening in other great podcasts. We'll see you on the other side, guys. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Bloody Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podcast. podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right. We're back here on True Believers.
We're back.
It's time to go back into some phase action. So the Tesseract's acting up. Can you kick it? I know it's right. You have the Tesseract. I mean,
that's the one. Hold on, that's the Tesseract fart noise. Let's just be honest.
Yeah. Well, come on. You have the Tesseract. I have Cap Shield. I think it's a fair share.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So this is where we dive into the plot analysis more and ties to the MCU and comics. And the first thing I want to bring up, of course, is we're going to be talking about episode 3, Destined here. And this is where I found some adaptation origin connection. Instead of being a latent inhuman, Najma reveals in this episode that Kamala is a descendant of the Jinn, a member of the clandestine. Now, you've touched on the clandestine here, Kyle, and I did a little bit of research here. And there's a funny a website, too, that I went to called tvtropes.org. And I found Clandestine is a short-lived Marvel comic series written and illustrated mostly by Alan Davis. The series focuses on the Destined family, children of the immortal Adam Destined and the genie Elaith. Their children what's that, Kyle?
Yep, Elaith.
Yep. Elaith. The children all have superpowers, some more useful than others, and are extremely long-lived, if not immortal. The story kicks off with 2 revelations. One, a mysterious enemy is sending dissolvable minions to try to kill the Destineds. Is it Destines or Destines?
Destines.
Okay. 2, the youngest members of the family, 12-year-old twins Rory and Pandora, have developed powers ahead of schedule and started superhero careers without telling their guardians. The original series was canceled after 12 issues, only 8 of which remain in continuity. It was succeeded by a 5-issue miniseries. The Clandestines made their out-of-comics debut, and of course, in Ms. Marvel 2022. So, Kyle, do you remember this series? You've mentioned it. Did you read it?
Yeah.
And what is your disappointment thus far? Is that you wanted to see more of a literal transition of this comic, or the fact that and then you're bummed that they're kind of tying in this series with this?
The Destined family was a lot of fun. I know it wasn't a popular series by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a lot of fun. It set up a corner of the Marvel universe that really hadn't been at the time it came out, that kind of what they were building with like the British lore and British characters in the MCU. And it was a lot of fun. And the twins were great. Rory and Pandora, they were great. They were very fun characters and always were seeming to kind of get in over their heads in certain aspects too. But the concept was a lot of fun and kind of felt a little bit like Marvel's answer to maybe DC's Doom Patrol in a way.
Okay.
Kind of a little offbeat, a little different, but and also very British. So yeah, I come back to this was a very fun series for me, but it didn't really catch on big within the Marvel universe itself. So again, I can understand why they would kind of annex them for what they're trying to do with Miss Marvel, because there's been so many drastic changes to the Miss Marvel origin from what the comics are. But so it makes sense, but it just in that aspect it's a little bit disappointing to me. However, in the comic series, one of the characters of the Destined family is a Jinn themselves. So
interesting. Okay, so there's a tie there. I'm looking at the picture, a comic book picture of it. Looks like a family photo with Mr. Clandestine in the middle there. It's a pretty funny picture, and with the kids in the front, one in red, kind of hovering, the girl kind of looking like a 60s hairstyle go-go, giving this funny smirk and stuff. It's pretty interesting there. So yeah. Okay, the reveal. The woman who appeared briefly in Kamala's vision while trying to save the mosque shoe thief in the previous episode is a Nuri. Cameron's mother is Najma, as are several others who survived to the present day. We also learn that Aisha, Kamala's great-grandmother, was another Nori who disappeared when the group had to split up after she found and put on the single bangle. The bangle allows access to power of Nor, which comes from Aisha and Namja's home dimension. They can't access it freely on Earth without it. There's a companion bangle that will allow them to get home, though they don't mind trying with one, even if it would be dangerous. Kyle, this brings up a question I just thought of. I think I thought of it earlier, but I didn't think about talking about it earlier. But do you think we're destined to find the other bangle?
I think we're destined to find the other bangle, but what I'm really hoping happens here, Kevin, is that something happens that boosts Kamala's powers enough she doesn't need the bangle.
That's what I was wondering, because it's supposed to come from within her. That like, aha, we have your bangle, and she goes, "Well, I don't need it." You know?
Yeah, I would like to see that be something, because that's kind of the issue I have with the bangle is it's really Green Lantern-ish, and how.
But are we missing out on a moment to where she gets both of them, and then she hangs out with Shang-Chi somewhere and go, "Bangle Bros, ka-ching."
I think she's going to be a little too busy hanging out with Carol Danvers, but it's always possible. You never know what could happen in these future Avengers films.
Well, Kamala's powers, as I go on here with the reveal, are due to her being part Jinn and inheriting an internal store of the Nor, which the bangle allows her to channel. And the brief vision Kamala had putting on the bangle a purple dimension full of dark figures with white eyes is the Nor dimension.
Kevin, I have a question.
Yeah.
If it's not the Nor and it's the Noid, is everything pepperoni powered?
Did you just go back to the Noid with
avoid the Noid?
Avoid the Noid.
Yeah, I did.
That was Domino's, right?
Yeah.
Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
I love the Noid. The Noid made me laugh. And you know what?
Well,
the Noid made me want to eat pizza.
Well, Kevin, what this probably is leftover time warp energy from last night's Time Warp podcast, which is coming out soon, covering the films of 1982. So, just a little time warp energy left over that had to
avoid the Noid. Oh, that's funny. And just a shout out to Brown Jovi band, and then the song during the fight scene was "Living on a Prayer" by Bon Jovi. That was good. I actually wanted to see Brown Jovi perform more songs. That would have been funny. So
Kevin is on the hunt for the first Brown Jovi album. So anybody out there, just
shoot, I'll have him on the hair metal podcast. They do all those parties, So yeah,
your next bar mitzvah. I'm just saying.
All right, let's get into some discussion for Seeing Red here. Ancient Orders of Protectors. The Red Daggers are dedicated to protecting their people from hidden threats like the Clandestine. They even have some magitech in their hideout that they use to confirm that if the Clandestines get their hands on the bangle, they destroy the Earth in their bid to return home. I want to ask you about this Red Dagger and magitech, because when I click on the link here, Magitech, advanced ambiguous magic always seems to end up working just like technology. The car engine might be powered by a fire element, and the telephone may work through the principle of contagion. But this doesn't affect the man on the street. They just get in the car and drive away, or pick up the phone and talk. No special talent required, just as devices were technology. So it says here that Magitech often appears to combine magic with modern technology here. Kyle, what is your thoughts on that?
It's always been a great story trope, because I've always found that there's been several shows and movies that have done things that even are stuff like in current modern technology that we tell you this is what it is, but it's actually powered by this, and so I think that's always fun when they start incorporating some magitech in there, where it's like, yeah, you think it's one thing, but yeah, it's really magic. It's kind of cool.
What do you know about the Red Dagger?
They've been pretty much a Miss Marvel character within the Miss Marvel universe itself. So I'm not having read too many of the Miss Marvel comics myself. I'm not familiar with them, but I can tell you this: it was kind of infuriating that we got introduced to this incredibly cool character and have him killed off in the same episode. I was a little bummed by that.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that, because I was getting vibes of what's his name that's in Star Trek Discovery now, but he was the cool guy from the Mummy movies. What's his name?
Yeah, Odad
Oded Ferrer, yes, that
yeah,
actor.
or as we will say for Amy and Nelson, Admiral
Yeah.
Vance.
Yeah, I was kind of getting that guy, the guy that's been
Yeah.
around, and
Yeah.
he gave us some history, and there's some cool technology there too. The little showing like the different dimensions lining up
Yeah, that was
together with
very
Earth,
cool.
and that was neat. That was really cool. So yeah, I guess and then it says here the continuity nod to this is that the Red Daggers are an ancient order protectors with knowledge of how the Earth coexists with many other planes of reality, much like the sorcerers of Kamartaj. Ooh, Doctor Strange tie in there.
Yep.
The layered world, how Wally describes the Noor dimension, separated by the veil of Noor energy, coexisting with a lot of other planes among the Earth that are not visible to each other. They have diagrams that overlay a map of Noor with Earth, as well as a presentation on how breaking the veil of Noor that separates the planes would destroy the Earth. Plot thickens there. Go ahead.
Kevin, you are seeing what's happening here, right? You have a dimensions crossing in this. We just had the multiverse of madness. We had the time kind of connections with Loki. All of this multi-dimension, multi-time stuff is all coming up in this phase all of a sudden. And
yeah. I was questioning what was happening at the end of Doctor Strange when I was showing my disappointment for that movie. What direction are we going here? And it obviously, but the question is still there with what we have coming up with the Secret Wars and Kang and all that kind of stuff and the quantum verse. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And, with the most powerful person gone evil now, apparently the witch, I'm still confused.
Well, but the pieces, I can see the pieces starting to fit together, and it's leading more and more to Secret Wars.
Well, the clandestines, as I go in here, it says the clandestines' real goal is to tear down the veil that separates the Noor dimension from Earth, as without it, Kamala would have an X5 level catastrophe to deal with. X5 level catastrophe, Kyle. Have you heard of this before? It's a multi-scale physical annihilation. If there is an alternate dimension or different realities or whatever is in this fiction, then many of those go away.
Yeah, or it just leads to Deadpool being in the MCU, one or the other.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, as my lovely wife would say. Let's go. Yeah, if it works with him coming in that way, that'd be great. It'd be awesome. The episode ends with Kamala somehow being sent back in time to the partition, the very event that was alluded to go throughout the series and serve as a source of generational trauma for the Khan family. So Kyle, it ends in a little cliffhanger there. She's back in time and wearing some new shoes from 2022. Kind of sticks out. So is she going to seek out some younger family members, I guess? I mean, what do you think?
I think that we're going to find out a lot of the history of this bangle in the next episode. I think we're going to find out some of the family history that we still don't quite know about yet. And I have a feeling, if nothing else, she's going to run across her grandmother.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna. Can I throw a guess out here real quick?
Oh, please do it. Make this interesting.
Remember how the grandmother talked about a star trail leading her to the train to her father?
Yes.
I think it might end up being Kamala who's the one who actually ends up doing that.
Interesting. That would be interesting. Okay. All right. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention here. I love the Kamala and Kareem snark to snark combat culminates in Kamala asking if Kareem copied his jumping techniques from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then he shoots back at Kamala and says, "Would you get yours from Donkey Kong?" I'm actually really excited for these guys' relationship. I think this is kind of funny.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I want them in a relationship. I think I think they're good, best buddies that can bounce things off of. But I got to give props to that fight sequence too between the two of them. That was pretty well done, all things considered. With that,
yes, but here's the thing though. I wanted to bring up the fight and chase scenes real quick. This fight scene between those two, I really liked, but. And I liked the previous fight scene near the wedding, right at the wedding, and there was like, to a certain degree, like I love like some of the weapons. Like the guy that had that whip, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think they're going on a little too long here. This is the thing I'm having with, and the chase scene was funny, but then I was just like, okay, it's going on a little too long here. I'm having a little issues with some of the fights and the chases. I know we got to throw these in here, Kyle, because it's Marvel. We need to see these. And also we need to see our young hero develop and, her fighting more and stuff. And she seems to be picking that up quite well. And the clever way of using her little powers to step on these little light crystal things, and how Najma will like knock one away, so she steps and falls. And I think he did the same as well. I think that's clever, but sometimes I'm like, I just get to the story,
Yeah. Though I will admit, I thought of all the fight scenes, obviously the chase scene was fun. So the fight scene in the Red Dagger headquarters when they unleash the steam and he's using the steam as cover to fight the clandestine.
Yeah.
I thought that was very well done. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's go ahead and head into Phase 4 episode final thoughts. And you kind of already said some predictions, but we'll look into that. So here we are at Phase 4, Kyle. First of all, any final thoughts on these episodes? I know generally how you feel and stuff like that, but was there anything that surprised you at all?
I don't know about surprising, but what I will say is, even though I do feel like the pacing is a little bit slower here, and that's been my knock on these last two episodes, I do think I just feel like the story is progressing and moving forward, and I'm interested in the mystery of the story of what, and because they've gone so drastic from the original origins of Kamala Khan from the comics, I think it makes it even more interesting with that, within that aspect. It feels like they've gotten away a little bit from some of the teen CW teen drama kind of stuff that they were doing in the first two episodes, which I think is a good natural progression. There's still some of it there, but I think it's not as heavy, and so the episodes feel a little more balanced with the MCU versus that. And I'm very happy to see that. I'm really curious to see how this time travel episode is going to play out. And then when we hit the final episode, what the ramifications of this final episode are going to be, because I think they're going to be maybe the most heavy ramifications outside of maybe Loki that we've had in a MCU show.
Interesting. I like that. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I'm really enjoying this ride, but I'm very curious to see where the story goes with. But I also want to see how her family's brought into it, because obviously her powers, her friend says, discovered her powers when she was escaping from the bad guys in the previous episode. But I think that the family moments are really what I'm looking forward to, and how this is going to happen, because I like when our heroes have either family members or loved ones or love interests that they are connected to, that can then be used against them from evil people. But it makes the bond of these characters more entertaining and more interesting. And I got to give a shout out to all of the actors in this series too. They've been fantastic. And especially Iman Vellani, she's been fantastic as Kamala Khan. I really enjoy some of her expressions. Even when she was having that moment when she was crying with her mom and not telling her what was happening, but her mom was just, being there for her. Just moments like that I really, really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to seeing. So, yeah. Kyle, take us out, man. What you got?
Well, we haven't done this in a while, Kevin. You need some Excelsior points.
Oh, God, yeah.
You used up all yours on your wedding. We tried to get you to wear the Moon Knight suit to the wedding, the Mr. Knight suit, and you wouldn't do it. The mask would have been cool, man. That's all I'm saying. I'm so disappointed in Kat.
Well, I'll be more than happy to bequeath that to Kat, because I think that's more his thing. But I don't know. I think I was looking pretty fly. I got some good compliments on that. And
I know,
my wife, Erin, was saying she got some feedback from people watching our wedding live was happening, and I got some compliments. So I'm cool with that. Worked out.
Yeah, you look good considering you're wearing silver and black, but that's for another thing.
Yeah, I did. I was looking good. I got down to my wedding weight. It was great.
So it's been kind of a learning experience for you, because it's a whole new character, Kevin. I'm feeling generous today. I am going to award you 4 Excelsior points episode. Do you want to use them now, or do you want to bank them and see what's going to
I'm
happen?
gonna bank them. I'm gonna bank them because in the next episode, when we're gonna do 5 and 6, I want to see if I can how much I'll earn them. Maybe I'll cash them in at the end there. So, yeah.
And even before that, between now and then, we got a little Love and Thunder to discuss. So
this is true. This is true. I'm excited about that.
You know,
yeah.
You might need a Zeus lightning bolt or something like that. So I think it's better to bank them.
I really hope Thor: Love and Thunder is fun. I hope it doesn't disappoint. I really need to lift me up after Doctor Strange. So
yeah, I think we're in good hands with Hemsworth, the Guardians, and Taika. That's all I'm saying. But there's a couple great ways to find the Fandom Podcast Network and True Believers. Of course, it all starts on our for our audio podcast at our homepage at fpnet.podbean.com. And of course, you can find all the podcasts of the Fandom Podcast Network on all the major podcast catchers out there, whether it be iTunes, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, or so many others. And of course, too, if you are watching the video of this show, it means you're checking out our YouTube channel. But if you aren't, please hop on that YouTube channel. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a thumbs up, share us out. Tell your friends, bring the popcorn. It's all good. Kevin's saying thumbs up.
I'm on video right now saying give the thumbs up, and comment down below. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, but not the thumbs down comments. Just comment down below.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Just give us say hi in the comments. Let us know what you thought of the show, and if you got something wrong or something right you liked, let us know, please.
Yeah. And of course, you can find us on our Facebook page, of course, the True Believers group on Facebook, also the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. We keep you updated on all the happenings in fandom. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram, Fandom Podcast Network, or on Twitter at FanPod Network. Of course, you can find me, Kyle, on Twitter at AKyleW, or bringing the thunder, because if you listen outside my window right now, there's definitely some thunder going on. So I don't know.
It was thundering yesterday during our Time Warp recording. What the heck? Send some of that rain our way. We could actually use it.
Yeah, it's Florida, man. It's that time of year. Anyway, you can find me on Instagram at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you on social media?
First of all, you can find us, obviously, find me here on YouTube, but also our True Believers Facebook page. We're sharing some fun stuff there. You can find me on Facebook, but also on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix.
Yep. And of course, to check out our TeePublic store where you can find all the gear of the Fandom Podcast Network, including, if you're watching on YouTube, that sharp True Believers shirt that Kevin is wearing right now. Go to teepublic.com, search for the Fandom Podcast Network, or type in the name of your favorite show on the network and find the gear, whether you need a t-shirt, hoodie, or whatever else, because they got all kinds of things on TeePublic. Our next episode, Kevin, Thor: Love and Thunder. It's time. It's here. We're diving back into the movie side of the MCU. I am excited. This is probably the biggest thing I've been excited for this year for the MCU. Bring it on. It's going to be fun. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. I'm going to watch Thor Ragnarok at some point before I go see Love and Thunder again.
That's actually a good idea. Do like maybe a little Thor marathon or something fun like that. Yeah, that would definitely be fun to catch up. And congratulations on your birthday. You're going to be turning 30. That's great, man. That's a big one.
Damn, I thought I was only going to be 25, but whatever. But again, like I said,
people listening to people that heard you shout out that avoid the knowing reference and going, yeah, he's not 30.
Yeah, exactly. I already ruined it, but like I said, our next episode we will be telling you a tale of a space Viking. So it will be fun. And of course, then we'll be back in a couple of weeks to wrap up Miss Marvel. And then we'll probably be taking a little break as we gear up for a little gamma irradiated fun with She-Hulk in August. So lots of stuff happening here on the True Believers. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the podcast. As always, it's always fun to give you a little MCU Marvel comic education. It's been a little fun for me with Miss Marvel too. So it's been fun to do that. Until next time, again, thank you to all of our listeners, you True Believers. Excelsior to you. We are Groot, and make ours Marvel. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you for some Love and Thunder.